We'll give people a couple, maybe a minute to catch on to the live stream here. In the meantime, enjoy what I'm looking at. About 15 seconds. All right, so wanted to talk about the evaporator I just replaced. For those that aren't following on Facebook, so there was another company. I'll just sort of cover the situation. There was another company that had gone out and diagnosed a leaking evaporator coil on this 2011 Rheem split heat pump, and the storage facility wanted to get at least two estimates to compare, and I didn't get to see the other estimate price for the warranty evaporator. Standard price, just quoted it at that and hoped for the best. Got word last night that we were going to go ahead and replace the evaporator for them, ordered the coil, blah blah blah. I get out there today after I had done the original second estimate and leak searched the system and found the evaporator coil leaking, and began to pull the coil out. I made a video of that part of the job, and got everything put back together and was working on the pressure test when I shut down the live stream initially. Didn't want to bog down with a 3-hour video or whatever, which would have been a lot more than 3 hours looking back on it. But the pressure test didn't go so well. I pressure tested, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was 150 psi or whatever. And I noticed that it was dropping a little bit, didn't think too much of it, and started my vacuum. I let the vacuum run for about 30 minutes before I went back to look at it again, after I'd seen that it was coming down from atmosphere, and noticed that it was having trouble getting down, so I immediately decided that I shouldn't have negated the pressure drop initially, because obviously there was a leak. The vacuum was not able to pull down below 1,000 microns very far, very consistently, even though I've got a brand new vacuum pump, brand new oil in it, because I literally just bought it today to replace the one that I had lost a little while ago. It had cracked and was leaking oil. But anyway, went ahead and repressurized with nitrogen and confirmed that yes, it was dropping pressure with the line and the coil all together. At that point I said, well, it's got to be either the lines or the coil. So since there was a trace of refrigerant left over in the suction line. Especially, there was a good bit of oil that came out when I cut the lines initially. I thought maybe I'd get lucky and be able to leak search it with a nitrogen pressure test and a tracer of refrigerant. That didn't get me anywhere. So I went ahead and cut the lines between or just past the evaporator coil. Picture here that I'll show you here. There we go. So I isolated the evaporator coil and the lines, and I pressure tested the lines on the roof and the evaporator right there at the stub. And I had a small pressure drop on the evaporator coil, maybe about half a psi, but nothing like the pressure drop I had been getting initially. So I'm going to try and switch back here, and the pressure test on the roof of the lines from the condenser, I had the liquid line and the suction line isolated independently, and the liquid line didn't change very much. Once again, maybe a half a psi, but the suction line dropped several psi in a fairly short amount of time. I took screenshots of it all, but the I don't remember. My brain's nice and screwed up after screwing around with this thing all day. But anyway, confirmed that the suction line was the issue with the pressure test, and decided that at that point, it was about 4 o'clock, a couple hours ago. It obviously wasn't worthwhile to tie everything back together and reconnect and try to get the condenser running for heat. So I figured they could ride on emergency heat for the weekend for now. It's not that cold anyway. But anyway, so I presented the situation to the attendant there at the storage unit office, and I also sent an email to the owner or the boss of that individual, and we'll wait for a response on that. It's just frustrating that standard procedure, assuming that the refrigerant piping is not a problem, came back to bite me on this one. But how often do you go through the trouble after confirming a leak in the evaporator coil and no leaks at the condenser? Would you go through the process or go through the trouble of isolating the piping just to be 100% sure? I know it's not normal or standard practice for any company that I'd ever worked at to assume that there could be a problem with the piping and go through the trouble of that on a standard pressure test or leak detection call. So I'm guessing what your guys' feedback would be on that subject. Would anybody, standard procedure, go through the trouble of isolating the refrigerant piping on the initial leak detection? Seems like it'd be a good idea, especially after it comes back to bite you. But, are you going to pump down the condenser after you do your standard leak detection and isolate the piping on every call? I highly doubt it. Every call you've got a leak on, seems unlikely that you would go through that amount of trouble just because it could come back and bite you. But I'm pooped walking across that roof all day. Up and down, up and down. And I didn't even get to go do my startup on anything. So I guess we'll save that for the next one. If we get a chance to go back and do the piping and they don't find somebody that's going to do it cheaper. I understand getting a second opinion on, most of your repairs, but it seems unlikely or illogical that in the middle of a repair like this that they would suddenly decide that our price for that part of the repair is unreasonable. It kind of looks like I probably should have waited 10 minutes to start the discussion, but I hate to have those that are starting to watch in the beginning just sit there and watch nothing for 10 minutes just to make sure that I've got the majority of my audience watching. So, just a short recap for those that have just come in. We ended up with a leak in the refrigerant piping between the evaporator coil and the condenser, and there was definitely a leak in the evaporator. But would you normally go through the trouble of isolating your piping just to be 100% sure? The piping runs over, I don't know, 5 or 6 storage units above the ceiling, or in the ceiling above the 5 or 6 storage units. And when I was talking to the attendant about needing access to at least one of the storage units, she made it very clear that access to the storage units on more than one would definitely be a potential problem, because they'd have to contact their customers and have them authorize access to their storage units so that we could work on the piping above it, which is definitely a bit of a drag, if you will. Anyway, I'd love to give those that have just joined a little bit more of a discussion, but since I'm sucking on data driving down the road, I'm going to cut this off here in a minute after I check this comment. Yeah, it did. Matthew Johnson, that was a heck of a workout to be in there all day. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, comment, share. If you'd like me to do more of these data sucking live streams out in the field, check out that blue button that's on my page to support this channel so that I can pay for the data that I'm sucking down at the moment. And if you don't want to do it that way, you can contact me through YouTube messages, and I'll give you my PayPal address, and maybe over the weekend I'll see if I can find the link to my Patreon, and I'll be happy to take small donations if you're willing, so that I can pay for the data that I burn. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'm going to cut this off. It's about 15 minutes now, and I'll take you along for the ride when we go back to finish this up, assuming that I'm going to be doing it since I'm in the middle of it now. Anyway, have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. Spend time with the family, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.